The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are simply that, opinions. All are presumed innocent until proven otherwise in a court of law. Sensitive topics are discussed. Discretion is advised.
There was no collision. There was no collision. There was no collision. You folks are the last line of defense. The last line of defense between an innocent woman and a system that has tried to break her.
When he got out and she drove away, she couldn't let it go. She got drunk. She hit him. She left him to die. It's that simple. John O'Keefe was a person, and he was murdered by Karen Reed.
Time is ticking for defendant Karen Reed. Her fate now in the hands of the jury. This morning, we're on a verdict watch. Plus, will the people outside of the courthouse influence the jury? We're live in Dedham, Massachusetts. Also this hour, if defendant Karen Reed is convicted, what happens next? We're spotlighting the potential prison that she could end up in. And if the jury's hung again, should the prosecution keep trying? Would there be a third trial? It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Monday morning to you and welcome to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? It is that time of the morning. Grab that cup of coffee. It's time for my opening statement. Can you see him now? With all the noise outside, it was hard to see him. But can you see Officer John O'Keefe now? The 16-year veteran of the Boston Police Department. Friends say he was a hero at home and at work. And I believe the evidence always existed to legally prove the allegations that his girlfriend was drunk and enraged when she hit him with her SUV. My friends, one of my life's missions is to support crime victims and their families. The evidence tells me that John O'Keefe is a crime victim. The prosecution says that Karen Reed launched a gaslighting campaign to make the public think that she's a crime victim. If that is true, that is not only insulting to real crime victims who've been wronged by the system or by someone serving in it, but it also undermines the years of hard work that dedicated victims advocates have put in to earn the trust of the good people in the public. I hope and I pray that the real victim gets justice here, and that is Officer John O'Keefe. That is my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
Because you regret a lot of the choices that you made in your 3.5 years of a relationship with him, right?
I would say that I resent him for leading me into the lifestyle that he led me to.
And you chose to participate in that lifestyle for many years, right?
I would say that my choices were made under a lot of emotional pressure due to my relationship.
In New York City, we've got the government's case winding down against Sean Diddy Combs in his federal sex trafficking racketeering trial. Testimony is going to resume at 9 a.m. Eastern time, so we'll keep you updated on that. In the meantime, in South Carolina, court is dark today in the coroner affair murder trial for Megan Jackson. The defense case starts up tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern. And in Massachusetts, we're on that verdict watch in defendant Karen Reed's retrial. The jury deliberating for almost 2 hours on Friday, returning to court in about an hour from now. Now, the last thing the jury heard were the closing arguments. Special prosecutor Hank Brennan and defense attorney Alan Jackson faced off on Friday. And this morning, we're showing you the best moments from each side, starting with the Commonwealth.
She made a decision about herself. In her Lexus, she drove away. She was drunk. She hit him, and she left him to die. He is not an it. John O'Keefe is not a body. John O'Keefe is not a buffalo on a prairie. John O'Keefe was a person, and he was murdered by Karen Reed.
Now, the Commonwealth was the last to deliver their closing argument and the final words heard by the jury. So, what do you think the jury thought? Let's bring in our power panel and ask them what they think. Here with me, the creator and the host of Road Patrol Live, John DePietro. He's outside of the courthouse right now. We also have with us former solicitor in South Carolina, put away Susan Smith, attorney Tommy Pope in the private sector now, and a state lawmaker as well. And in New York, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Mario Gallucci. Good morning to you all. So we're going to ask you all to grade the Commonwealth's closing argument. We're going to do the same for the defense in the next segment. So let's start with you, John DePietro. You've been in the courtroom for so much of this trial. What did you think when Hank Brennan brought it home?
Over the fence, home run, grand slam, A+. What he did was not only did Hank Brennan, not only did he completely decimate Karen Reed, but he also decimated the conspiracy. Hank Brennan tied together all the different pieces. As you can see, the various crowd that is out here today outside of the courthouse and its building. But Julie, what I like that he did was he explained all the different elements as far as notice how she pivoted when Jen McCabe said, "I saw you in front of the house, Karen." I love how Hank Brennan also talked about this is someone he helped people. He stepped in for the niece and nephew. He needed help. He needed help, but in that moment, the one person knew he was there, she didn't help him. He brought them through the whole thing. I also think it was very effective, Julie Gray, when he talked about, maybe it'd be easier for people to comprehend if it was a gun or if it was a knife. But this was a 6,000-pound vehicle. And where he really made a strong impression was she made a decision. Karen Reed decided to put that Lexus in reverse. And for that, she has to be held accountable.
Yeah, that was quite a moment. John, thank you for that. Tommy, to you next, please. How would you grade the Commonwealth?
I thought it was extremely effective. If you think about it, it's been a long, long trial. It's hard to keep up sometimes on the outside what was before the jury, what wouldn't. And, the defense is really looking for any toehold. I'm saying sarcastically, I was disappointed we didn't hear the full measure of the conspiracy because I wanted to see how all these various pieces from all over the state and nation were sewn together. And, of course, they kind of abandoned that. And so I like the idea that they're pointing out to the jury that, you got to focus on keep your eye on the ball, so to speak. And so I thought he did. I like the subtlety of, like the issues that Vinny was talking about last hour with the bringing up the question of the timing. And I always wanted to have the jury discover things with me during closing argument, even though you already knew it, kind of work through. And I think he did a lot of that too.
Tommy, thank you for that. And as you were speaking, we could see the defense team arriving at the courthouse. The jury set to be arriving soon, and the deliberations are going to get back underway. Mario Gallucci, want to ask you for your assessment, please. How would you grade the Commonwealth?
I would say it's an A++. I thought that Brennan acted more like a defense attorney in a summation than a prosecutor. They both had completely different styles of summation. I thought they were both very good. I like the way Brennan was able to use look the other way, which was what the defense used in the first trial. How he was able to use that on the prosecution side this way, I thought was very effective. I thought he did a very, very good job of moving around the courtroom, keeping the eyes focused on him. His themes were good, and the way he tied everything together. This was not a conspiracy. He showed it wasn't a conspiracy. I thought he did a very, very, very good job.
Right. Mario, thank you for that. Let's play a clip that was used during the closing arguments, and this is one of those instances we saw where Hank Brennan used the defendant's own words against her.
I described this to everyone. So you probably heard this before, but John looked like a buffalo on the prairie. It was just a lawn and a heat that it wasn't a bush or a hydrant or a dog. It was a weird shaped lump at that time in those elements. And I was looking to find him on the side of the road. I was expecting I'd find him.
She She was expecting she would find him there on the side of the road. John DePietro, you were in there when that clip came into evidence. I remember that day. Your thoughts on how effective it was to see those clips again in the closing arguments?
Remarkable, Julie. And I also like how Hank Brennan made it very clear. There was an eyewitness at 34 Fairview, and it was the defendant, Karen Reed. Her own words. You listened to her words. Maybe I clipped him. I didn't hit him. And who would describe someone that supposedly you loved as like a buffalo on the prairie? Julie Grant, I believe the story of this retrial has been those clips that Hank Brennan had used so effectively, and he used it so effectively to tie in exactly the narrative that he established with this jury.
Right, John, that has been another huge difference. Another difference boy, I mean, what a difference a new prosecutor makes. Tommy Pope, Hank Brennan, second time around, how he tried this. I was saying to someone that had asked me about the case, and I said, you know, I don't know that I've ever seen a prosecutor so precisely prove the time of a homicide. I mean, he proved it down to the minute, the seconds, really, and the way he married her GPS with her black box data, or John's Waze GPS. I'm not sure whose it was. I can't recall. But then John's health phone data, everything, his last text message time, all to get to 12:32 a.m., that awful minute where everything changed. Tommy, how often do you see something so precisely proven?
I think we weren't prepared for it, particularly having seen the last trial. And, you know, out of respect for the first prosecutor, you know, you deal with what you've got. So, you know, obviously the second can be both easier and harder according to where you're at. But having the fresh set of eyes on it, I think, helped. And it was tight. And, I mean, he brought it in. And, you know, we've had this conversation before. Who in the world lets their client do all these videos, you know, before you're going to trial? I mean, that was the craziest thing, but the best. Her talking every day after court. I mean, I know she's not under a gag order, but I think her own words are going to ultimately be her undoing.
Mm-hmm. Right, Tommy. Mario, your thoughts on the difference from trial 1 to trial 2? You know, the introduction of the defendant's own words, the introduction of the various types of data. We have different medical testimony. I mean, it really was a comprehensive story. Hank Brennan very clearly told the story that we didn't quite hear last time, did we, Mario?
We did not, but it's a retrial. And I agree here with Tommy that, you know, there are so many things that happen between trial 1 and trial 2. I believe that Hank Brennan did a very good job of streamlining it, taking out Michael Proctor, the effective use of the interviews that she did after the first trial were very important. You know, like they just said, you know, her own words are going to come back to bite her here. And I believe, you know, although she didn't have a gag order from the court, this is something that I, as an attorney, would have probably put my own gag order on her. Be quiet. Stop talking.
Right.
So you know,
the Gallucci gag order. Yes. That's what you do. Yeah, to keep those clients quiet. I know. Yes, somebody should have done something. And I really think that, you know, hindsight, of course, is 20/20, right? But as soon as this case started getting contentious, and as soon as we started seeing some ugliness and vitriol outside, I really think the judge should have imposed a gag order on everybody way back when, before trial 1 even started. But here we are. Better late than never, right? All right, gentlemen, stand by kindly, please. More to come here on opening statements. Here's what we've got.
When the government fails so completely, so catastrophically, when there are dozens and dozens of points of reasonable doubt on the table, your duty, your oath is clear. Your sworn obligation under the law is to acquit Karen Reed. Not just because you can, because you must.
When we come back, we're looking at the defense closing argument and talking about whether they raised any reasonable doubt. And if Karen Reed is convicted, what would happen and where would she go?
The Court TV podcast will return.
car did not kill John O'Keefe. Find Karen Reed not guilty, not guilty, not guilty.
She was drunk, and that night was a recipe for disaster. The fate of this night was sealed well before that night because John O'Keefe and Karen Reed were in a toxic relationship. This relationship was crumbling.
Before Hank Brennan's closing argument, the jury heard from Alan Jackson and Karen Reed's defense team. They went first on Friday, and they claimed that the Commonwealth failed to meet its burden. Jackson saying there was no collision. That was the theme of his presentation. He was stating, quote, no science, physics, and data, and he said that none of that sides with the Commonwealth's theory of the case, claiming that Reed did not hit and kill her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. Jackson also claimed that the investigation was compromised from the beginning.
Let's change the scenario. What if it wasn't the house of a Boston cop? What if it wasn't the house of Brian Albert? We can be certain that investigators would have torn that house apart to get answers about why a fellow police officer was laying dead on the homeowner's lawn. You can betcha. But because this was Brian Albert's house, a Boston cop, nope. And because he was a fellow cop, an insider, they didn't even open the door. That is not justice, folks. That's just pure favoritism.
So was this a crumbling relationship leading to murder? Or was it a corrupt investigation? We're asking, how well did the defense do in raising reasonable doubt? Not just doubt. Doubts are okay. You should have some doubt, but reasonable doubt. Was it raised? Let's bring back in John DePietro, Mario Gallucci, and want to welcome in criminology expert, author, and professor at St. Thomas University, Dr. Debbie Goodman. Ladies first, Dr. Debbie, let me begin with you, please. Did you see any reasonable doubt raised by the defense in close?
Good morning. First, Julie, I want to compliment your opening statement. Can you see him now? And that's so important. I feel the spotlight really needs to be on Officer O'Keefe. And regarding the doubt, perhaps it's raised, but not only should it be reasonable, Julie, I feel it has to be logical. I do not see the logic whatsoever in potentially 11 officers who are friends and colleagues of Officer O'Keefe. We understand the mentality of law enforcement, Julie. Local, state, and federal officers tend to regard one another as family. It's a very tight-knit brotherhood, sisterhood, and I simply cannot agree with the premise that these officers were in collusion and killed their fellow friend and colleague. But to me, it's very logical and reasonable that this individual who killed Officer O'Keefe is Karen Reed.
Dr. Debbie, thank you so much for that. Again, these are pictures shot just a few moments ago, maybe about 5-6 minutes ago, when we saw the defense team arriving at the courthouse for day 2 of deliberations. They didn't get a full day on Friday, just a couple hours. Mario Gallucci, being a criminal defense attorney, how would you grade this defense close, and was there reasonable doubt raised?
I thought he was very effective. Not the style I use. You know, he as a defense attorney, he looked more like a prosecutor, stayed pretty stationary at the podium, read from his notes. But I thought he effectively used the PowerPoint presentation, especially when it came to reasonable doubt and showing reasonable doubt. And this is where you have reasonable doubt. But I agree with you, and I agree with the last panelist. It's to come up with this giant conspiracy that all of them on that night decided we were going to kill him, and let's set this up. I mean, he tried. I mean, it's a typical defense strategy, an alternate theory, police misconduct, a bad investigative process. But if you don't have anything to really sink your teeth into, except for Michael Proctor, it's going to be tough. It's going to be he's got a tough road to hoe here, a really tough road.
Great points, Mario. John DePietro, last but certainly not least on this point, your thoughts on the defense and whether you've seen any reasonable doubts raised throughout the progression of the trial.
Really, what a contrast. Hank Brennan, we had everyone locked in him, and then he paused when he was going to start, and he looked over at Peg O'Keefe. There was an emotional moment, and the jury was glued. They saw that connection. To me, a huge mistake by Alan Jackson is they're almost asking to me, Julie, for the jury to suspend their common sense. This whole business of no collision. And anyone that has followed this, clearly there was a collision. He then proceeded to throw every conspiracy against the wall. He even brought up the Google search that has basically been disproven. Hank Brennan, Julie, he talked about John O'Keefe. Alan Jackson, there was no talk about Karen Reed. He just attacked, everything that had been put forward. I think this whole business of no collision, you can ask the jury for a lot of things, but you can't ask them to suspend common sense. And that's in essence of what they were asking the jury to do.
Great points, John. John, you're such a pro. I see someone trying to interfere with your commentary here a moment ago.
There's a mental health crisis in this country.
You're such a pro. I want to move on to the other topic we have here in our trending segment for all of you. So after the closing arguments, we know that Alan Jackson had a request to the Reed supporters outside during Friday's lunch break. Take a look.
This means more to us than you can imagine. But if the volume comes up even a little bit, we're gonna be ordered to stay in the building, and y'all are gonna be ordered off the lawn. So just please do us that favor. This means as much as you yelling out. Bless your heart.
Thank you, Jackson.
God bless.
Now, the defense asking Reed supporters to opt for the most common hand signal for love instead of chants outside of the courthouse. And a gesture even the defendant displayed before entering the courthouse on Friday ahead of closings. And I saw her do it just a couple of minutes ago. Okay, so there it is. So apparently they're doing that instead of a lot of the screaming and chanting and things that we saw on previous dates. So we're asking, will this crowd, they call them the Free Karen Reed crowd, will they affect or influence the jury? Let's talk, okay, this is a live look as well. What we're looking at here, our camera's positioned, a live picture. So we'll just ask our panelists to talk over this. Dr. Debbie, back to you. Your thoughts on this crowd and whether you think they could have any influence on the jury that is not sequestered.
I don't think so, Julie. I really believe in our system of justice. I think when jurors are tasked with the very important role of coming to a decision based on their analysis and review and interpretation of the facts, they realize, literally and figuratively, that anything that may come about from this crowd is just noise. And it's almost like when we enjoy going to sporting events, right, with our families, whether we're baseball fans, basketball, football, and such. It's always noise in there, but I don't think it affects the players. So I would submit that our juries of 7 men and 5 women will not be impacted by any noise.
Dr. Debbie, thank you for that. And thank you for noting the makeup, too, of those 12 jurors, 7 women, 5 men, as you said. That's right. Mario Gallucci, what do you think? Would you be concerned at all if you're the Commonwealth with this crowd of people intent on being seen and being heard here?
Absolutely. I've had cases. I've just tried a case recently in New Jersey that you're aware of, that we had crowds of people coming every day. I was very concerned that the jury would see the crowds. During jury deliberations, I went to the effort of trying to get them to come into separate entrances so they didn't see the crowd, so they won't be influenced. I had the judge tell the members that were in the courtroom that they needed to behave, that they couldn't do certain things, they couldn't wear certain shirts, they couldn't have certain flags, they couldn't have certain banners. Yeah, I went above and beyond in not only that case, in many other cases. So I would be concerned if I was the prosecution in this case that these group. First of all, who are these people that could just sit there all day, every day? You know, so that's a question I'd have in my mind too. But yeah, it's a concern. It would be a big concern.
Right, John, Mario, excuse me, before I go to John, another point that was raised in a fair question. I remember asking this a long time ago. The first time I looked at a crowd of people there, and they had very uniform signs, looked like they were all printed at the same place, and there was one of those expensive trucks where you have the advertising, the digital advertising on the side of the truck, and I said to myself, was this paid for? Was this paid? We had a discussion on the air, because I've seen a lot of protesting too, and I had never seen one quite like that with so much uniformity. So perhaps we'll never know. John DePietro, you've seen it all every day. I hope you're not being accosted by anybody at the moment. Your thoughts on whether this crowd will influence the jury?
I don't think so, Julie. I mean, it's late into the game. Last time around, it's a little bit earlier. But I think you can almost, people need to understand, as Hank Brennan put it out, I mean, she killed him. She should be found guilty of second-degree murder. So, in essence, these people that repeat these lies that she puts forward, they're basically complicit in putting out this misinformation. So, I think the Massachusetts State Police, that they have protected this jury. I think we're going to get the verdict that we need.
Right, John. I'm in agreement. You know, I'm wondering if we see any of those 227 signs anymore. Did all the protesting crowd just agree to forget about that, just like the defense team said, we're going to come off of this, even though we hung our hat on that for so long and blamed an innocent person, a good friend of John's, for the innocent search that she made at Karen Reed's direction. I wonder if we'll see any of those signs today, or if they've all been taken down and thrown in the garbage somewhere. Who knows? John DePietro, stay safe, my friend. Thank you for the excellent analysis this morning. We'll look forward to talking again soon as the day goes on.
Great. Thank you, Julie.
Thanks, John. Mario and Dr. Debbie are coming with me. Please do the same at home, friends. When we come back, we're spotlighting the potential prison that defendant Karen Reed would go to if she's convicted. And could it be third time's the charm? Well, many people are asking, what if the jury is hung again? So we'll talk about it. We'll talk about what the Commonwealth should do if that happens.
Now, back to the Court TV podcast.
Welcome back. As we wait to learn the fate of defendant Karen Reed, many are wondering what happens if she's found guilty. Well, she's currently out on a $100,000 bond. If she's convicted, her bond is likely to be revoked. She's likely to be remanded into the custody of the local sheriff's department. And while we don't know exactly where she would end up, we have a pretty good idea. So Massachusetts has exactly one women's prison, MCI Framingham. It was built in 1877. It's been called dilapidated and is classified as a medium security facility. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about what will happen, what each side will do if Karen Reed is convicted. Let's bring back in criminology expert, author, and professor Dr. Debbie Goodman, and welcome in private investigator, former Army intelligence officer, and former NYPD officer as well, Manuel Gomez. Good morning to you both. So when we think of what may happen here, let's just say for the sake of our analysis, if the jury comes back with a guilty verdict, Dr. Debbie, do you think it is likely that the judge will revoke her bond and remand her immediately into the custody of the sheriff's department?
Yes, Julie, I certainly do. We know and understand the process and the protocol, and I think that's exactly what would happen. Now, stepping foot for Karen Reed into this type of facility, the corrections officers, they will have to maintain what they refer to as the 3 C's, care, custody, control. That's essential at any of these environments. But now for Karen Reed, the question becomes, can she adapt? Can she adjust? can she acclimate? And it's a stark reality, Julie. You know, for me as a criminologist, the one thing that's so priceless, of course, is one's freedom. And the entirety of that becomes very much compromised and controlled. But yes, I think that is what would happen. She would most likely be taken into the facility probably in the early morning, you know, late evening hours when the other inmates are sleeping, so as not to cause disruption. And most likely in the beginning week, she would have to be in a very secure facility, not with the general population, because they too watch the programming and the news and your show and might potentially be expecting her arrival.
All right, Dr. Debbie. I'm sure her defense team, if she's convicted, not saying she will be, just saying if she were to be, I'm sure her defense team would ask the judge to allow her to stay out on bond, ask for a report date to report, to turn herself in. Manuel Gomez, something I've been wondering about, because if she would be convicted, this would be in the death of a police officer. And you know there's a long-standing tradition, Manuel, to handcuff a perpetrator with the fallen officer's cuffs. I'm wondering if you think Karen Reed would be handcuffed with John O'Keefe's cuffs if she's convicted.
I absolutely hope she is. I hope that tradition is followed and she is cuffed. And I'm also hoping that she is convicted. I got to say one thing. And this is something I don't do. I'm usually not for the prosecutor. I'm usually for the defense attorney. But this prosecutor should be commended. What an amazing job he did in his closing. And I hope this jury convicts her. And I hope they do escort him with the handcuffs and that she does not get a temporary bond, that she gets immediately incarcerated.
Manuel, thank you for that. I think that this judge probably would have to revoke her bond. I can't imagine any reason in the world why not, especially because she's been given a lot of leniency. Dr. Debbie, how often do we see a homicide defendant out on bond? I mean, I've had so many people saying to me, why is she out? Why is she out? And I thought 100,000 was pretty low. Someone like her could easily make that. She's been given a lot of freedom. As you said, freedom is a key word. What do you think, Dr. Debbie? Do you think it's a strong likelihood that the judge would not entertain the idea of a report date for Ms. Reed?
Yes, Julie, but you touch upon, and Manuel as well, there is a theory in criminology, I'm not in favor of it, but it is called female favoritism. So at times when we are looking at female defendants involved in killing-related cases, whether first degree, second, manslaughter, vehicular homicide, sometimes there is leniency, and the students and I have very intriguing, wonderful conversations about it, because if we were looking at perhaps a male defendant facing the potential of killing an officer, would leniency be granted? Most likely not. So it is an issue for us in the criminal justice field, but I'm in agreement with Manuel, Julie, that this individual, Karen Reed, I think needs to be found guilty and face the penalty that is coming with the crimes committed.
Dr. Debbie, thank you. Something to think about, female favoritism. Are we seeing it here? Manuel Gomez, nobody wants to go to prison. We know Karen Reed does not want to go to prison. And for anybody just joining the conversation, she is legally cloaked in the presumption of innocence. We are just talking about what if she is convicted. So, Manuel, if she goes to this state prison, how do you think she's going to do as an inmate?
Well, I hate to say this, but I don't think she's prepared one bit. The fact is, she is a upper middle class Caucasian woman with really no criminal background, and she doesn't look like she's physically able to be able to handle herself. Unfortunately, I feel that she's going to be a sheep among wolves. And the fact that she's going as a cop killer, the correction officers and so forth are going to make sure that she has a comfortable stay.
Dr. Debbie, I want to ask another question of you, please, before I know we need to let you go. How do you think, along those lines, Karen Read, you know, being someone who would be a first-time offender, somebody who has not experienced the prison system before, how do you think she's going to do? What effect might that have? This is, I believe she's 45 years old. How do you see her faring?
I don't see her doing well, Julie. Again, it's like a society within a society, these correctional environments. And now, against one's will, they will have to live with, eat with, interact with complete strangers who may, in fact, want to do her harm. And so I think the mental decline is another consideration for many inmates who are facing incarceration, because again, the freedom is compromised, the interactions with loved ones, the uncertainty, and quite frankly, the fear. Fear is a real issue among those who are in incarcerated environments.
This is really helpful information. Thank you so much. Dr. Debbie Goodman, I know we need to let you get off to your class to do some teaching this morning. Thank you so much for teaching us this morning as well. We'll look forward to having you back soon. Manuel Gomez is coming with us. Please do the same at home. When we come back, here's what's next on Opening Statements.
How do you feel that it's almost over?
Ready.
Anything to say to your supporters?
Thank you. I love them.
The fate of defendant Karen Read is in the hands of the jury. So what happens if they're hung again? Should the prosecution then try her a third time? We'll talk about it next.
This is the Court TV Podcast.
Welcome back. So what if there's another hung jury in the Karen Read case? So let's look at how it ended last time.
To continue to deliberate would be futile and only serve to force us to compromise these deeply held beliefs. I'm not going to do that to you folks. Your service is complete. I'm declaring a mistrial in this case. I'll be in to see you privately in a few minutes. So thank you so much for your service.
After 5 days, the jury was unable to come to a verdict. So what if that happens again? Should Karen Read be tried a third time? And what could tip the scales to make that decision? Let's talk about it. Let's bring back in Tommy Pope, Mario Gallucci, and Manuel Gomez. Tommy Pope, would you start us off, please? Having had such a long career as the top prosecutor in your office, tell me, what would you do if they're hung again? Would you try her a third time?
You know, third time would be hard. I was thinking you've got the death of a police officer, but the context is a little bit different. You know, even though you've lost a brother in blue, I think, you know, it wasn't a police activity shooting. And so, you know, normally that is a driver because we cannot tolerate, you know, people not obeying law enforcement and so forth. So I don't know that it gets tried again. I think they've given as good a shot as they could. And it may not be there. I do wish all the options were on the table from the first trial, the ones they did rule on or get hung up on that ruled on that are not available to the prosecutors. So I don't really see it tried again. I think they've done their best job this time, and hopefully the jury will see it that way.
Ooh, that's interesting. Okay, Tommy. Mario, let me go to you next, please. What do you think will happen?
I agree with Tommy. I don't think that the third time is going to be a charm here. You know, this is a high publicity case. You got jury problems. Now you have jury problems selecting a jury. To do this a third time with the amount of celebrity that's around this case would be a very difficult task. Everybody in the country knows about this case. This is a, you know, well-rounded case. Now, I mean, if you talk to the jurors that just deliberated, and as a prosecutor, you will find out that there were 11-1 to convict, then, you know, maybe you would consider trying it a third time. But without that knowledge, I think it would be very difficult task to do.
Interesting, Mario, thanks. Manuel, last but certainly not least, I want you to weigh in here. If it's a hung jury, what should the Commonwealth do?
Well, like my colleague has said, if it's like 11 or 1, should we go after it again for the third time? I say yes. But she has done so many interviews. This is the first time I've seen someone on a murder case doing Dateline interviews as things are going on. She's admitted to hitting him on Dateline. The prosecutor did a phenomenal job presenting this case. And personally, as a former cop, I believe that they should go forward. We need to send a message. You don't kill law enforcement. You don't hurt prosecutors. You don't hurt the people that protect this country. We should do it just on that basis alone.
I'm with you, Manuel. I'm with you that I think they should try it again if it's hung, and I think they will, too. I think this office will. I think that there were a lot of lessons learned with this case. Unfortunately, a lot of unforeseen factors, and I think this was territory that was kind of new to, I think, a lot of the parties. As you both, you noted, we've got a defendant giving all these interviews. We've got a lot of noise outside of the courthouse. A lot of, the Commonwealth has essentially, put in the evidence about how she was on this, campaign, if you will, to try to go to the members of the media, manipulate things, and try to get her story out there and get in front of it. And when the Commonwealth was staying silent, people are only hearing one side of the story. Mario, your thoughts on that point, kind of the uncharted waters we've seen with this trial?
So you talked about it in your opening statement. This was a classic gaslighting. I mean, she had a targeted campaign to make herself the victim. And she did a very, very good job of it. I mean, look at these people that have nothing better to do but to sit out there all day and just chant for her. And she did a very good job of turning this completely around, the whole narrative. She completely turned the narrative around, and she became the victim of this big police misconduct. What she did was pretty impressive, but also very sad.
Right, Mario. I agree with everything you said. Yeah, it's disturbing to me, and Manuel, I'll give you the last word here, because real victims have fought for years to be seen and heard. It's been hard in our justice system getting victims to be seen and heard. And without a doubt, John O'Keefe is the real victim here. What Karen Reed is doing, I don't know. Manuel, your thoughts, please.
Well, I hope that the jury sees, and we'll know within the next 48 hours, that one, throughout this whole case, she really hasn't shown remorse in this case. Second, she's admitted to the fact of hitting the guy on Dateline. The prosecutor did a phenomenal job on that. But like my colleague said, and like you said, this has been one amazing circus. The defense team has done everything perfectly to make sure that doubt is put into this case. And the facts are still there. Like the prosecutor said, data. It doesn't lie. She is guilty. And I hope they prosecute her. In God's name, I hope they do.
Manuel, I'm with you. We'll see if the jury is hung or if they arrive at a verdict. It seems like everybody is hoping for some kind of finality, one way or the other. No matter what you think of the case, I think everybody wants it to be finished and finished soon. Thank you all for the great insight. Mario, we've got to let you get off to court. Manuel, you've got investigating to do. Black Ops private investigations is your company. Thank you so much. And Tommy Pope, you're coming with us as we head to Court TV Live. We'll be right back, and we'll go live to Massachusetts as the deliberations resume. Thanks for watching Opening Statements. Be right back. That's all for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. I'm your host, Julie Grant, and it's been great being with you. On this show, I am calling out any pants-on-fire moments in our big trials and true crime stories, and I want you to come along with me. Opening Statements is live every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern on Court TV. Thank you for downloading this episode. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your friends. You can watch past shows anytime you like on CourtTV.com.